Good
As
afternoon, Dr. Caba Maria and Dr. Moballeghi. Welcome to the third New World Forum on the subject of the role of universities in strengthening sustainable peace in the world. Please accept our deepest gratitude for participating at this forum. We are indeed honored to host two eminent professors, one from Iran and the other from Romania. I'm acknowledged to introduce Dr. Caba Maria, President and Director of the Political Department at the Middle East Political and Economic Institute. Dr. Moballeghi, Associate Professor at University of Social and Cultural Studies. Tonight we are discussing one of the quintessential concerns of the world, the concept of peace. How should we define it? Can we really define it? Or is there any possibility for the establishment of peace? Or is just kind of hope? And is just the absence of war or any kind of visible or invisible violence define peace? These are all the questions and more which we are going to discuss in this forum. To start, I'd like to ask Dr. Caba Maria to define sustainable peace and his assessment of possibility of achieving a level of sustainable peace in the current situation of the world. Please.
good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this outstanding and also in the same time challenging topics. For my side, I wish to be with you physically in Tehran. I love to travel a lot and to be with among my friends in Tehran. That actually I'm traveling frequently in Tehran. So for me, it's a great pleasure and honor to participate alongside with you and to give my thoughts or to share my thoughts with you dedicated to this very crucial theme during this international context. So I will start with can you hear me? It's fine? Okay, so I will proceed with your question that it's dedicated to sustainable peace and how we can assess of the possibility of achieving a level of it. I would like to start with this idea. Since the United Nations Security Council and General Assembly adopted the resolution on sustainable peace in April 2016, United Nations members states and practitioners have started to reflect on what this concept means. So this is very new development concept, and we should focus more and more on this one. In the review of the peace building architecture, introduce the language of sustainability peace as a counterpoint to the term peace building. We should also talk about in comparison with peace building. Although conceived as a comprehensive process, then peace building has come to be narrowly interpreted as time-bounded exogenous intervention that take place after the guns fall silent in fragile or conflict-affected states. Peace building is seen as an extension of conflict resolution or conflict transformation. On the other side, as talking about sustainable peace, this seeks to reclaim peace in its own right and detach it from the subservient affiliation with conflict that has defined it over the past 4 decades. Sustainable peace is also aimed to clarify the minds of some suspicious stakeholders, fearful that the concept could be or is in another Trojan horse for outside intervention. I will give you 4 major comprehensive, I like to say, characteristics of sustainable peace. So firstly, we describe sustainable peace as an explicit and deliberate policy objective for all states, regardless of whether they are beset by violent conflict. Second one, sustainable peace is underpinned by an infrastructure composed of institutions, norms, attitudes, and capacities spanning different sectors and level of social organization. That I would like to say in additionally that this infrastructure needs to be constantly updated in order to adapt to changing the context and circumstances. The third point here, as a sustainable peace, is conceived as a necessarily endogenous process that requires strong and inclusive national ownership and leadership. And the fourth issue, and I would like to say also the last from all these characteristics, are sustainable peace is multi-sectoral and all-encompassing, amounting to a meta policy deserving of attention at the highest level of national government. So sustaining peace encompasses activities aimed at preventing the outbreak, escalation, continuation, and recurrence of conflict. That going further with my explanation to your question, that I would like to stress that all societies possess attributes that contribute to sustainable peace, whether their institutions, their culture, their policies, or the less tangible quotidian and touched norm of interaction between individuals and groups. Other idea is that we should reflect to the starting point, whereas the starting point of the peace building is conflict and the process is one of transitioning from war to peace. When you speak about sustainable peace, that begins with identifying those attributes and assets that have sustained social cohesion, inclusive development, the rule of law, and human security. These the factors that altogether contribute to a peaceful society. I would like also to give you here also a short comment that conflict is a natural phenomenon arising from social interactions and even a desirable one, insofar as it often leads to innovation and even though progress. So this is a very tricky idea. Going forward, to answer to the second part of your question is that peace can be most effectively sustained when it's conceived as a public good for which the state is responsible. National ownership of a process that is inclusive of all key stakeholders, including the private sector, women, and youth, is thus a cornerstone of successful effort to build sustainable peace. Inclusivity is key to ensuring that peace is maintaining over time. Peace, because you are focusing more on this on the idea of peace. I do not know what happened, but was an internet discontinuity. I would like us almost going to the conclusion.
Sorry, yeah. I suppose we are connected again. But we were just in the section you were talking about inclusivity.
Yes.
At the point we missed your speech.
So you got the idea that inclusivity is a key to ensuring that peace is maintaining over time. Peace. I will only few idea and I will conclude because this is as a last part of your question. Peace, unlikely law and security cannot be enforced from the top, but must be woven into society from within and from below by fostering partnership and incentives to maintain. Dialogue among individuals, groups, and social sectors, as well as between the governments and its citizens, is key to success of the sustaining peace enterprise. But unfortunately, we are not near this goal in today's world. We are far from pacifying conflicts that extended for over decades. We can see in Syria, Libya, Yemen, all humanitarian disasters. Not to mention that the way withdrawal from Afghanistan was done after decades long external intervention. We wish for the future generation to see more engagement on peace education for a sustainable living. It will be interesting how it will be conceptualized further in an increasing digitalized world. So, as a conclusion to this question is that sustaining peace constitutes a paradigm shift in how we think about peace and how we address conflict. Thank you very much for this, the first intervention.
Thank you for your comprehensive definition of the concept of peace and your assessment of the way that it can be achieved. For the second question, we'd like to ask Dr. Moballeghi, do you concur with Dr. Caba Maria's definition and his assessment of sustainable peace? In your opinion, can sustainable peace be maintained without the elements such as justice? Does the current world order comprise justice so that we can discuss about building and maintaining peace? Another problem, this time the problem is with electricity. I think this forum
at least
is
we have the
kind of
voice. So
Yeah, but it's good. We still have the voice, and with me, I'm fine.
We can keep on. We won't give up.
can we? Okay.
Again, we are back.
No, this is very good. Just this short intervention. This is very good for this theme of this subject. The education is very important, even though in these challenges we should go further with our activities.
Yes. In the name of the merciful and compassionate God, I'll start my talk by thanking the Institute for Social and Cultural Studies, in fact, for organizing this meeting. In particular, my special thanks go to Dr. Gholami, the head and director of this well-known institute. In fact, this series of meetings about the future of the world with the title of the New World are due to his valuable thought and efforts. I really appreciate him for creating an atmosphere for dialogue on a transnational level in this institute. I'm also grateful to Dr. Khadem Hosseini for introducing me, and I'm really happy to have an opportunity to talk with my dear colleague Dr. Caba Maria. So, can I continue? We have connection? Okay. To some extent, I'm in agreement with my colleague Dr. Caba Maria, and if I don't go to details, I can say that generally speaking, I'm okay with the way he provided us with a definition for sustainable peace. But let me say that defining justice and locating its role in maintaining peace is such a sophisticated and let's say complicated task. It can even be said that an important part of the theoretical efforts of the academic discipline of political philosophy, somehow, if we regard its long history in our mind, is directly or indirectly about answering so many questions, so many different questions around meaning and definition of justice, its place and role in social life, and its effect on keeping a given society in a non-violent situation and let's say sustainable peace. So returning to your question, I think we have to keep in our mind at least two criteria or principles to relate justice to sustainable peace. First criteria is about reconceptualization of justice, and the second is about defining justice inside a special discourse. I speak about these two. I start with reconceptualization of justice to include fairness for people of future. So for sure, there is no chance for keeping a society in long living and stable peace without giving a role to justice in its management. It's obvious and with no doubt almost everyone can accept it. But when it comes to considering sustainability, as a crucial element for keeping a special society in peace situation. So the way that we conceptualize justice, I mean the concept of justice, becomes so important. In fact, it's like a criteria for establishment of such a society. More specifically, let's say sustainability is associated with considering the next generation important as well as people of this time and place. It means to make sure that the society is in a just way. We need to conceptualize justice as a concept that considers not only the fairness in our current time but also in the future for coming generation. In fact, I think and I guess it's somehow soil of approaching sustainability to keep it in our mind in relation with the benefits of coming generation. So I go to the second point. I think defining justice inside a discourse that aims equal distribution of opportunities is such an important task. As you know, different definitions have been given for justice. Some of these definitions refer to the equal distribution of resources and sources, and others refer to the equal and fair distribution of opportunities. In my opinion, justice in the distribution of sources can lead to the creation of equal poverty, while the search for a kind of justice that aims the distribution of opportunities promotes the possibilities of having a just life at various levels of the society. So I prefer those definitions for justice that focus on a more equal society regarding giving and providing people more opportunities. Based on this and under such a regulating of the concept of justice within these two elements, I can say that world order is related to sustainable peace via promoting of justice, of course, justice in this meaning. In fact, it can be said that providing more justice for a society or for many societies leads to more expansion of peace, not only inside these societies, but also outside them and in the atmosphere of the world order. So returning to current world order and speaking about what we have nowadays around ourselves, I must say that some forms of power management process at the global level that we have nowadays, such as giving the unfair right of veto to the most powerful countries, most power owners, in fact, most powerful countries, power owners among other nations in the UN and in the Security Council is incompatible with justice, as I mentioned. But it is necessary to mention that the existence of this, let's say, techniques do not help to go forward, even though it doesn't help to go forward for a more sustainable, peace-oriented world order. But at least in the short term, they can have some functionalities in creating balances between nations that can play a role in the formation of some form of stability. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moballeghi, for your assessment. Thank you, Dr. Moballeghi, for your assessment and definition of peace and your conceptualization of the concept of justice. For the second question, Dr. Caba Maria, considering the contemporary history, how do you assess the role of universities in peace building since pre-World War? Has there been any particular case of contribution of universities to establishment of peace?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for this question. Of course, this question will go forward with the second two, the previously two questions. I would like also to congratulate our colleague, Dr. Moballeghi. He gave us a very interesting also definition of justice, and for me it was very knowledgeable and informative his presentation. Thank you very much, Dr. Moballeghi. I'm going further. This is one of the topics that I'm also focusing during my classes also in our university in Bucharest University of Economic Study. And we analyze also the role of university in peace buildings, and also if there are few examples or not, and how we see this in explanation that links. So I would like also to give an extended discussion, because I am one that I'm engaging in my university. So given the growing importance of the higher education within the international community in its efforts to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, there are challenges and opportunities for higher education to contribute to peace building in conflict-affected and post-conflict settings. For more than a decade, the international community has explicitly stated that the achievement of global development's goal is depend on addressing access to quality education in conflict-affected context. In 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals extended these to the higher education. There are interpretations in settings affected by conflict. Higher education is often perceived to be a luxury, not a necessity. There are researchers that indicate the positive role of a higher education to contribute to post-conflict recovery and to the promotion of stability, preservation of culture, and professionalization of the social sector. On the other side, higher education is critical towards transforming life opportunities and the development of local communities. Conflict remains one of the greatest obstacles to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. It is imperative then to understand that the barriers hindering young people access to all levels of education, and to examine educators' perspective, capacities, and the pedagogical tools that might support efforts to promote peace and quality education in conflict-affected societies. In recent years, there has been a resurgence of interest in the study of direct war and its impact on education. Higher education can play a pivotal role in cultivating social norms that underscore cultures of peace, coexistence, and non-violence. That I like also to stress that here can be fostered through education to support peace building and positive social changing. For example, argue that the cross-institutional approaches in which researchers, practitioners, and students from all disciplines work together to address the trigger behind conflict may be the most viable approach to managing and minimizing conflict in the longer term. Higher education does not only contribute to peace, it also has the potential of reproducing violence that can spread widely throughout society. For instance, higher education may inject a political or racial ideology that may be exclusive and intolerant. This approach to education and peace building can also work for or against peace. The theory holds that such exposure under the right condition can break down negative stereotypes based on, for example, differences in ethnicity, race, religion, gender, socio-economic status, and so on. The horizontal inequalities, these disparities may also be reproduced or mitigate through higher education. For example, Entering higher education is often a competitive process, particularly in the conflict-affected societies due to limited seats. Its perceived role in providing social mobility, opening opportunity for employment, and uplifting one's social status. Thus, the stakes are high, and within a conflict context, if one identity group is perceived to have disproportionate access to higher education, this may impede peace building by perpetuating group inequalities. Higher education has the potential to support or hinder peace building through the spreading of message of peace or war, positive or negative, intergroup contact, and exacerbating or alleviating horizontal inequality. In short, higher education has negative and positive, or good and bad, faces. Higher education in conflict-affected contexts is often more complex than this dualistic perspective suggests. Thus, to make sense of the intersections between higher education, conflict, and peace, beyond the duality of good and bad, we should employ the concept of a third phase of education. This is important. What means this? The other phase of the education suggests that it may be more common for education to promote negative peace rather than positive peace. That is, education may not necessarily be promoting sustainable peace, but is de-emphasizing war. This is neither good nor bad. It is not the negative phase of education, nor is this the positive phase of emancipation. It is something in between. I would like to say a decent starting place to work towards reconciliation and peace without embracing cynical or giving up demands for something better. Education as a whole is rarely the panacea for the conflict transformation. That is, envisages to be the paradoxically particular dimension of the system or its location within the post-conflict political economy in which it finds itself may render it to more harm than good. The linkage between higher education and peace building are not straightforward, neither entirely positive nor wholly negative, but somewhere, as I mentioned, in between, contingent and ever evolving. Now I am moving to the second part of your question. If there are some particular cases, here we should develop a little bit more, because as a general conclusion, you'll find out what means how university can contribute or not contribute to this issue. I like to stress that tension with pedagogical standards, a liberal issue, navigating tradition and modernity, and the hardness of English medium instruction complicate efforts towards peace building through higher education in conflict settings. The education is described neither the bad sort that perpetuates war, not the good sort that delivers social transformation, but well-intentioned, if theoretically, passively executed, somewhat problematic, and having mixed effects on society. These hold implications for curriculum, teaching, and research. These are the implications on the university in order to see later on what is the effect. That university educators working for peace and development in conflict-affected contexts should aim to further engage that in between, maximize the positive of higher education peace building, minimize the negative, and embrace more common middle ground. It is here that higher education peace building is perhaps most promising. I would like to say global reports have also clearly established links between education, conflict, and peace. While universities are critical actors in the promoting of peace and conflict studies and often contribute to peace dialogue, university can also be enablers of social inequality, ethnic division, and a culture of violence. In fact, academia is not a ground zero for established public policy yet. This is challenges. In fact, academia where some attempt to foster also to engage in a United Nations program for peace in different universities. But I personally do not think they produce results that surprised us. After World War II, there was more impetus for established peace programs as well. During the Cold War, there was much more talks on demilitarization and against nuclear weapons than today. We can analyze as an example, a general example, what happened in Afghanistan with education and how if university has a major contribution to the transforming the society. So there are so many challenges over there. I already mentioned that challenges is a pedagogical standards, liberal issue. It's about mix between traditional and modernity, English language. So university per se, they didn't engage too much in framework this characteristic to the related to the peace building. But what I would like to stress that was a backbone or a cornerstone to sustain as a policy maker. I would like to give you a few examples in this case. A case in point is a Ghana creation of a National Peace Council in 2011. Whose mandate is to facilitate and develop mechanisms for preventing, managing, and resolving conflict and building sustainable peace. The other example is, and another country that has made peace a deliberate policy objective is Costa Rica, which in 2009 created a Ministry of Justice and Peace, signaling a policy shift from preventing violence to promote peace. And another example, in 2015, the Kenyan parliament adopted peace policy after more than 10 years of national stakeholder consultation. And coming to the MENA region, but in the North Africa, I would like to stress that Tunisia attempt to create a national council for the social dialogue is an example of movement towards such policy. So as a conclusion, universities so far more support that engage and to shape the whole policy as a frame or as a law in a country. So we are in the early stage in order to be the main stakeholder in this peace building process. Thank you very much. This was my intervention on this subject. Thank you very much, Dr. Hosseini.
Thank you so much, Dr. Caba Maria, for this definition or explanation of the role of universities at peace building. As long as I noticed, your assessments are somehow associated with the way that universities as institutions of culture and knowledge can be the base for eradicating cultural violence, the invisible violence, which can be the base of structural violence, and later on the visible and direct violence. But your analysis of universities' dualistic face, both as developing violence and at the same time promoting peace, was very interesting. I myself was in the same opinion that universities, while they are promoting the culture, at the same time they are promoting disparities, maybe because of their marketized, at least from this perspective, because of their marketized nature these days, they can be one of the elements of promoting a disparity and thereby the violence. Thank you so much. Let's go further and ask Dr. Moballeghi here's a question. In your opinion, why are universities presumed to be involved in peace building? Is this prospect related to universities' position as anchors of enlightenment and social authorities, or is this prospect related to the major commissions of universities as institutions of knowledge? Thank you.
Thank you. I think what Dr. Caba Maria shared with us was really interesting. His ideas about education and its relation with peace building process, especially making such a useful differentiation between negative and positive education and their connection with peace-building process and other issues. He spoke about them around that topic was really interesting for me. Returning to your question, in my opinion, these two fields, I mean social authority of universities and their institutional functionality in the society, are really interconnected and they are coming from the same origin. I can explain it. The social authority of universities comes from their institutional functionality, in fact. Also, their institutional functionality is rooted deeply in their capacity to play such a role as sources of social authority or social authorities for the society. So these two, I mean social authority of universities and their institutional functionality within and inside a given society, as I see, is somehow associated with keeping that society in peace. In this regard, one can understand how universities can play a role in promoting peace. In fact, the stream of expansion of knowledge as the central function of the institution of university can get down when there is no war in the society and between a society and other societies. So in a situation like that, we can live in a peaceful society, and in a sense, when war starts, door of universities closes. So to make a conclusion of what I've said, I have to speak about two channels that via them universities can take part in the peace building process. First, peace building process depends on improvement of our knowledge about peace. We need the knowledge of peace. Without a knowledge for peace and around peace, there is no chance to have a peace. To make a more peace-oriented environment, both at micro or nation state and macro or world order level, we have to have a peace-oriented knowledge. And the second issue is about how universities belongs to knowledgeable and well-educated section of the societies. In fact, science experts are in universities and they come from universities. These people are the hope of societies to make bridge between each other, I mean between different societies, rather than dig a gap or leave a hole between them. So communication between universities in this sense is so beneficial. I mean universities of different countries and different cultures. It gives societies a useful chance to understand each other deeper and better. It also can help them to put peace before conflicts and different forms of wars. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moballeghi, for your explanation about the ways that universities as the institutions, as the social institutions and as the basis for spreading knowledge can be a contribution to peace building, and the way that communication between universities can be helpful in this era. Dr. Caba Maria, has there been adequate academic theorization, conceptualization, and modeling of sustainable peace? Would you please refer to some key theories in this field? Are these theories likely to be abstract or realistic?
No, thank you very much for this question, dear Ms. Chairwoman. I would like to start with this idea. There is a theorization at many levels. However, the domain of study remains in an incipient mode. There is a lot of heterogeneity. I personally consider more effort are channeled into peace building. Sustainable peace is a later concept after United Nations published the sustainable goals that I already referred. Yet the domains converge a lot, and ultimately the goal is peace and living in a state stability in the absence of conflict. The conceptual basis of the sustainable peace can be tracked back to Johan Galtung, a seminal work on positive peace. This is the first reference. Positive peace requires building and strengthening the factors that foster peace. Among these factors are those that enable everyday peace, such as solidarity and compassion between different ethnic groups, and systemic factors such as equitable distribution of resources, well-functioning institutions, tolerance for diversity and human rights, security from physical harm, and access to food and clean drinking water. I would like also to introduce the idea of, as the second references of at the level of United Nations, as Secretary General Antonio Guterres continues to consider how best to pursue his diplomacy for peace agenda, the conflicts in Syria, Yemen, and Libya could paradoxically provide useful entry points, provided the outcome beyond ending violence and stabilizing shattered society. It also formulates from a sustaining peace perspective. Similarity, as he leads an overhaul of United Nations peace operation and the supporting governance structure, the Secretary General should look at this operation from the perspective of prevention and sustaining peace. Regional political officers in Africa and Central Asia are low-hanging fruit. This shift in perspective would require the United Nations to develop a qualitatively different way of conducting peace and conflict analysis and programs that gives politics, people, and inclusive national ownership an uncontested home. An increasing literature of sustainable peace strengthens the tie between sustainability and conflict. This is the third major point. Coleman and Dutch mentioned these ideas. Just as in a mainstream sustainability, there is no standard definition of sustainable peace. However, as a concept, it might be underscored as a state where the probability of using destructive conflict and violence to solve problems is so low that it does not enter into any party strategy, while the probability of using cooperation and dialogue to promote social justice and well-being is so high that it governs social organization and life. The other idea is that higher education institutions should be reflecting on how they can contribute proactively to the reducing of inequality, frustration, radicalization, and violence in society, beginning with how they can better tailor the education and training they provide to contribute to individual and societal resilience, conflict transformation, sustainable development, and social justice. This is the higher goal, which remain a little bit abstract. Higher education institutions still tend to regard peace and conflict studies as a niche topic within the social and political science. As almost as a conclusion, yet the realities of global conflict and fragile now demonstrate without any doubt that all disciplines, industries, and level of education play a part in conflict, either directly or indirectly, and all have a role to play in its mitigation and prevention. As a conclusion, when you speak about abstract on reality, we see currently there are much more discussion on an abstract idea than put in the practice. We should move more into reality, or to transform into reality, that only as a discussion. But on the other side, it's important to discuss and to theorize everything in order to have a framework, to know from which side we should start to shape the whole progress in the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Dr. Caba Maria. Your explanation about the theorizations and different theories of peace building was very informative. Honestly, your discussions about the tie between peace and conflict was kind of blurred for me. I couldn't understand. Uh, you talked about a kind of theory which ties peace and conflict. I was listening carefully, but
Yeah.
what did you mean?
Yeah, there is also a theory that try to link these two ideas, and as a peace and conflict, there is a theory, as I told you, but this is still as a level of very abstract idea. That's as you ask about abstract and realities. This is a much more to abstract idea than to put in the practice.
The abstract ideas,
Yeah,
which are supposed to be a practical one.
yeah,
Anyway, peace researchers and peace studies, as you mentioned, have turned to be the niche discussions at most universities. Thank you. Again and again, we would like to ask Dr. Moballeghi, do you agree that the dominance of capitalism over most universities from one hand and the bond of capitalism and war, on the other hand, have nullified the university's confrontations with conflicts? Or even from a pessimistic perspective, can we say that universities have indirectly supported wars? Thank you.
Okay, let's look at this question a little more carefully. I think the expansion of universities has occurred in connection with a system of relations that was, in fact, itself somehow the result of the free market. Yeah, and I understand, let me explain it, and I understand that there is a difference between capitalism as a big ideology and the hegemonic power, a structure, and free market approach. But at the end of the day, free market is located inside capitalism, even though we have some form of free market experiences which are not purely and purely and completely inside capitalism. What I can say is that both the emergence and deepening of the role of contemporary universities, what we have nowadays everywhere in the world with the name of university, this emergence has been related to the free market structures. But on the other hand, the use of these universities as a tool to promote the capitalist approaches is requested by the system. And with the word system, I mean what we can address it within the literature of Jürgen Habermas, who suggests it while he's busy with expanding several ideas about instrumental rationality. So you are familiar with that literature, how the system is different from life world and details about it. So I think in that sense, yes, using of or let's say misusing of universities via capitalism is real and important. In this way, universities have radically, in fact, somehow and sometimes misused by capitalism. But it's not the whole story. From other hand, one can say that universities have contributed to the expansion of peace-oriented knowledge, which in its nature, at least to some extent and somehow, is not in line with what a capitalist system, at least sometimes, prefer. So I can say, contrary to the nature of the universities, which is about expansion of peace-oriented knowledge, they have sometimes helped to produce the necessary knowledge for war and conflict as well. If I want to provide you with some examples, I can say some deadly weapons are grounded on a science that developed inside universities. In other words, universities help the militaries to industrialize their knowledge for war. But as I said, it's a kind of misuse of universities and not related to their nature, as I mentioned.
So, Dr. Moballeghi, your discussions about the way that universities, unlike their nature as the institutions for developing and maintaining peace, have turned to be in the middle of our market and have been even distributing the capitalist system and even more disparities. And at the same time, they are by nature they are constructed to promote the values and norms which are good for the public. Rather, they have turned to be from one hand they have turned to be the elements of this capitalistic system. So, in my opinion, universities and even the science which is developed and even produced at the universities can be or even we can say should be balanced by the culture of that society. So the culture can be a kind of surveillance on this on the way that science is created at the universities. Somehow maybe it can stop the way that it can the produced science can be a new way to produce new conflicts. For my question from Dr. Caba Maria, in your opinion, what are the required contexts to expand the involvement of universities with the problem of peace building? Assuming that these contexts are provided, how do you think the peace building role of universities can be effectively reinforced?
Yeah, thank you very much also again for this question. I think this question is very related to the second question that you asked me. And on that question, I develop a lot, but I would like to stress few things on this question. So firstly, well, we should live in less disruptive context. This is the first issue that we should take into consideration. We need more dialogue to attenuate the idea of otherness that brings us one against another. This is a second very important idea. Further, since university can be seen as a microcosmos of society, the question arises whether the university programs prioritize the contribution to the public good and what their role and responsibility should be in educating young people to address some of the society's biggest problems. Our focus during these days should be more and more on young generation. That will be the people, they will bring the changes in the society, especially currently in the digitalized world. The other idea is the overall role of educational systems in responding to significant societal change and crises, including the social function of educational institutions in identifying and disseminating solutions to pressing societal challenges. Moreover, we need more funding. This is a very important issue, more funding, even though funding from states as a governmental funding, but also from private sector. For education, this funding should be channeled for education, universities, higher enrollment in poorer areas. That should be focused more. In that area, there are less, where there are less opportunity for the people to attend the university, especially. Often, higher education is seen as a luxury, as I already mentioned, in less developed parts of the world. Changing this paradigm will eventually lead us to better inclusion and disruption of information. And in the role of they assume, educational institutions can, firstly, heighten awareness of the gravity of the problem conflict, can highlight data and factors that increase gravity of the facts and share between counterparts. The second idea is that conduct research with emphasis on interdisciplinary collaboration that gives deeper understanding of cause, nature, and scope, ameliorating and prevention of mass violence. Third, upgrade education for peace in the university and also extended the reach to educate the general public and leaders, including political, religious, ethnic, and military leaders, all of whom have great responsibility for preventing catastrophes rather than induce them. And the fourth point is that work on developmentally appropriate educational materials for elementary and secondary schoolers. So we should take this idea, these issues, working in conjunction with teachers at each level. As a conclusion, what I would like to stress the role of your educational system, Iranian educational system, in funding and promoting as a research at your national level. And now Iran is getting, I think, on the second in the world on research input. So you understood very well this engaging in the society, investing in the education. Thank you very much. And your example could be extended to the other countries, especially in the region.
Thank you, Dr. Caba Maria, and it was our pleasure to hear such good news from you that our country has been at the top of the ranking countries in the realm of peace building and funding on research. I hope to see that all violence, disparities are all eradicated from the whole universe. Dr. Moballeghi, Palestine has been an age-old problem of the world and Southwest Asia. How do you assess the role of universities in resolving this problem through formulation of realistic and reasonable theories?
Thank you so much. Okay, it's a question that needs a little more focus to answer it. Okay, I start with this idea that I come from the academic field of political philosophy. In this field, we have an understanding of political solutions in resolving crises. Based on this understanding, it is necessary to respect the basic rights of people of a land or the land. According to this understanding, which is also what we can see it everywhere, exercising everywhere in the world and in different lands, I think the original inhabitants of Palestine, regardless of their religion, they can be Muslim, Christian, or Jews, even they can be followers of non-Abrahamic religions or even without religion. These inhabitants should be able to decide on the future of their own land, and I mean the inhabitants of Palestine, the original people of Palestine. Based on this idea, I think the best solution for Palestine, as the academic ideas in the field of political science originally confirm it, the best solution is to allow the Palestinian people to participate in an election and decide about their land. This idea is officially supported by, as I know, by Islamic Republic of Iran as well. So based on that, I personally do not support two-state solution because it is founded on a system, let's say, understanding of apartheid system which legalized racial segregation. So let's say people of Palestine didn't invite religious immigrants to come to their land to occupy it. So why they should lose this? They should lose most of their ancient land of their fathers without having a role to cast their vote about it. In fact, I myself can say, how can I buy the religious propaganda of others about their origin in the land of Palestine? Even the presence of some troops of Jews in the history of that land doesn't make an absolute right for believers of that religion from a variety of different races, groups, and nationalities nowadays to go there and occupy the land of others in a violent way. So I think the best way is letting people of Palestine to cast their own vote and to decide themselves for themselves and to decide about the future of the land and to decide how they want to live within that land, considering whatever has happened during this long time over them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moballeghi. So it seems that Dr. Moballeghi believe that giving any kind of resolutions or decisions on Palestine and the indigenous people of Palestine is better be let to be on their own part to cast their own votes beyond the theories, beyond the political theories which have arisen from the countries which generally legalize the racial disparities. So, Dr. Caba Maria, besides giving your opinions on Dr. Moballeghi's words, please tell us what is your idea about Yemen. Can universities, far from favoring the flow of wealth and power, put forward a reasonable model to establish peace and end assassinations of civilians and civil famine in Yemen? As the last question.
Thank you very much. But before answering this question, I'd like to say, because I listened very carefully what colleague Dr. Moballeghi said about Palestine, and for me it was very, very informative because we have in Europe and also different perspective. But for me it was very, very informative and to take into consideration his assessment. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you.
Now we are moving to the Yemen issue, and this Yemen should be tackled from different point of views, of course. But speaking about the university and educational level, unfortunately, in settings affected by conflict, higher education is often perceived to be, as I already mentioned, a luxury, not a necessity, especially in case of Yemen. In such a context, it is difficult to keep classes going, not only to think about curriculum and education for peace. I would like to make here a short comments that in comparison, because I know about the Afghanistan, but in Yemen it could be also the same. When you have classes over there, there are people that attend the classes, they say, I have also other duties. I would like to engage more to make my homework, but on the same time, I should fulfill my military duty in order to go to fight. So there is a very challenge between accomplish a security issue and also fulfill educational task. True to be told, fulfillment of education goal is connected, as I told you, directly to security, would like or not. As long as civilians are able to go to attend classes, they will not get engaged with the economy of war, with the structures that recruit children and teenagers and so on. In the absence of the possibility to go to school, things are decided by hazard. Then in the case mentioned, we should ask ourselves, how do university educators pay careful attention to local context in unique and particular ways? That they are, as a professor, that should adjust their behavior, their curricula, everything to that very local context in order to reach the aims of education and to rise the level of education that is important for the society. How does this affect their choice of pedagogy? This is another question. There are definitely many implications for curriculum, teaching, and research, as I already mentioned in my previously intervention. In addition, the main disadvantages in country with long-term conflict as Yemen, but also could be applied in another, even though in Syria and in Libya or in other place. There is a limited access for higher education, high rates of dropouts. This is not, I would like to say, the case of Syria, as I mentioned. You speak about Libya. Yemen is a very particular case. You mentioned very clear this is that you should be concerned on that Yemen higher education system. Further, Melanie Greenberg, who sits on the board of different peace organizations, sees higher education placed in the peace-building process as twofold. The first one, academics offer up the theoretical framework that drive peace work, she said, developing theories to address and prevent conflict. Then the interaction taking place on campuses brings additional benefit to the theory. However, as mentioned previously, academia is not policy making, but could assist policy making process. The governance is assuming in the executive power and in the countries as conflict is often decided military. We know this issue better. I think that the main dilemma we should solve is ensuring a certain level of a functional economy and security, especially speaking about Yemen case. Then we can debate the Yemeni case from the educational point of view. Hereby, I insist on working out political dialogue and political solution to these conflicts. So, firstly, we should conclude that the political issue and security to stabilize as much as possible that region, and moving and put more effort in developing higher educational system. But we do not avoid assisting as much as possible young generation to attend the schools, university of different form of education is needed that country deserve in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Caba Maria, for your explanations about the way that higher education can be accessed when there is no conflict. We all wish that one day there is possibilities for anybody to accomplish their potentials, all human potentials, and there is no block on the way that they can enjoy their human dignity, and this is all achieved in the presence of peace and absence of not only war but any kind of violence. And we all I think we can conclude that universities, unlike being entangled in the capitalist system, or unlike being spreading disparities, they can be the source of producing a culture which reduces disparities, whether gender disparities, racial, class disparities, and then there will be the culture of equity even among the nations. If there is no special question and no special issue to be considered, I'd like to thank both Dr. Caba Maria and Dr. Moballeghi. And in conclusion, Dr. Moballeghi, do you have any issues to and what about you, Dr. Caba Maria? Anything else to? Although all your explanations were comprehensive and informative, it was our pleasure to be here with you. Anyway, if there is any more, we are here to listen.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I would like also to thank the invitation for the Institute for Social and Cultural Studies in Iran. I accepted the invitation to discuss with my colleague, Professor Abdolmajid Moballeghi, that I am very attached to your endeavor as a Iranian society, Iranian educational system. I'm very well familiarized with your educational and research environment. So for me also was an exchange of views with my colleague on during these lectures. And I would like to encourage you also to go forward with other similar subject of theme to debate for the role, of course, the role of higher education in the society, and in shaping the, even though to assisting and shaping the policy and decision makers and so on. Also, this is a very important debate, I think, in my opinion. I would like also to thank you very much, dear Dr. Hosseini, for this initiative and to be the chair of this debate. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. It was indeed a pleasure to be here with you, Dr. Moballeghi.
Thank you so much. I want to appreciate the presence of my colleague, Dr. Caba Maria. In fact, so many good and informative ideas was shared and was stated inside within our discussion. I was really educated with these so many ideas. I really want to appreciate the presence of my colleagues, and also I want to thank you for your good ideas and good management of the whole meeting. Thank you.
So if you don't mind, let's end to this forum, and thank you. I'd like to appreciate your presence, both of you professors. It was my honor and pleasure to be here with you. We wish to see you in our next meetings. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening also.
Thank you.
Hope to see you also in person when I come to visit Tehran. Thank you very much.
Of course, you're very welcome, and we are anticipating to host you in person in Tehran. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Bye bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.